Good morning, dear distinguished professors, honorable guests, presenters, participants, and ladies and gentlemen. It is our great pleasure to welcome you to our online symposium, Finding New Directions for Architectural Education in the New Normal, held by Indonesian Association of Architecture Schools, APTARI, in collaboration with Indonesian Institute of Architects, IAI, and Committee of Architecture Education, ACAE of ARCASIA. My name is Nanda, and I will be your host for today. We will have an amazing discussions panels on establishing architecture studio protocols, where we will be talking about what are the critical aspects of the new architecture design studio, what is the catch, and more importantly, how can we establish a new studio culture and pedagogy to sustain learning outcomes. These are few issues that we expect to discuss with our peers from Asian perspective. But before we dive into the opening speech and panel discussions, I would like to share information concerning today's participations. The highest percentage of participants are design studio coordinators, while the second highest are the head of graduate program. And then participants affiliates with APTARI or IAI. We are glad to have participants from various provinces in Indonesia. Architecture schools located in West Java take the highest participations, while the second and the third are those from special capital region of Jakarta and East Java. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to take the opportunity to extend our warmest welcome to the chairman and deputy chairman of 3 institutions collaborating in the symposium. First is the chairman of Indonesian Association of Association of School of Architecture, Professor Yandi Andriyatmo, PhD, and then Architect Ketut Ranawiyarka, Chairman of Indonesian Institute of Architects, and Mr. Ariko Andika Bina, General Secretary of Indonesian Institute of Architects, IAI. So sorry. And Architect Ahmad Saifuddin Mutaki, representative member of ACAE from Indonesia. We would like to extend our welcome to Architect Gyanendra Singh Shekhawat, Chairman of Committee of Architecture Education. His deputy, Architect Adrianta Aziz. To start our symposium, I'm pleased to invite the chairman of APTARI, Professor Dr. Yandi Andriyatmo, to deliver his speech and officially open our symposium. Professor Yandi, time is yours.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody stay health and mind. Good morning to all the audience, especially my friends, member of APTARI, Indonesian Association for Architectural Education, and member of IAI, Indonesian Architects Institute. Also welcome to the representative from ACAE member countries. Thank you for participating in this webinar. The idea to have this webinar was triggered by our concerns in the future of architectural education in the post-pandemic of COVID-19. All the academics have been struggling to adapt the teaching and design studio in the last 3 months. We all face the challenge in the uncertainty of the situation. At the same time, we need to act quickly and prepare for the new normal that is happening now. We identify two main challenges and issues that need our quick response. First, how to adapt our design studio learning process. We need to think how to ensure health and safety for all. We need to adapt to the new ways of studio learning, such as blended learning, virtual interaction, etc. We need to think how to prepare supporting our facilities to face this COVID-19. And we also need to achieve the expected learning outcomes, which is very difficult. Next, the second challenge is on how to transform our curriculum to respond to the current situations. In particular, we need to think about to set the new priority in curriculum contents, to open possibilities for new discourses and new contexts, to utilize the new forms of information as big data or any available data in the internet, to prepare students for the new form of architectural practice. And so in responding to those challenges and issues, we will need to establish architect and design studio protocols in the new normal period. The main question to be discussed in this webinar in particular, what are the critical aspects to be considered to establish the architecture design studio protocol in the new normal period? And the second question, how to establish design studio protocol to maintain the expected learning outcomes? Thank you to all the speakers who are willing to share their experience and thought to respond to these two main questions. For all the participants, I hope that this webinar will give some information and ideas to share further your institution to prepare better for the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for remarkable speech. Our event. We are coming to the main part of today's event, the panel sessions. Today's symposium will be arranged into 2 consecutive panels, consisting of 3 presenters each. For this, I would like to introduce our moderator, Professor Dr. Paramita Atmodiwiryo, who will chair the session. Professor Dr. Paramita Atmodiwiryo is a faculty member of Department of Architecture, Universitas Indonesia. She obtained a PhD in architecture from the University of Sheffield, and she is also active in developing learning methods for architectural education to promote students' creativity and awareness of the relationships between users and space. She is awarded Future Art Green Leadership Award in 2019. Professor Mita, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Nanda. Good morning to all the webinar audience. I will moderate this session in English. Okay, so first of all, I would like to hope that everybody is in the healthy condition wherever you are with all these difficulties that we face in this situation. So the title of our webinar today is Finding New Direction for Architectural Education in the New Normal. This webinar becomes an opportunity for us all to share some ideas about what we should do in our architectural education in response to the current pandemic situation and the shifting to the new normal. This topic has become our main concern recently. We have discussed it in many opportunities, and we all face the uncertainty of the situation in the near future of the new normal. So today we will focus on the particular topic of establishing architecture design studio protocol in this webinar. We expect that from the discussion here, all participants will get some useful insight in developing what to do in the curriculum and the learning method in each institution. There are two main questions that we would like to address here, as already mentioned by Professor Yandi at the beginning of the session. The first is, what are the critical aspects to be considered to establish the architecture design studio protocols in new normal period? And then the second one, how to establish design studio protocols to maintain the expected learning outcome. So we really hope that although we have to face all these difficulties of the situation, we really hope that our learning outcome can still be maintained. So this is quite a challenge for all of us. So the discussion today will be divided into two panels consisting of the representative from 5 countries, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Indonesia, and India. They will share here their experiences and some lessons learned on the shifting of design studio teaching and learning. The first panel will mainly address some principles and aspects of architectural education in the new normal, especially on the shifting of the studio learning platform. And then the second panel will be more specific on the impact on the current situation, which we will discuss from various perspectives, such as how to make sure the protocol of health and safety can be organized in our institution, building resilience, and the impact on internship as a part of the professional learning. I would like to start the discussion of the first panel. So we have here 3 speakers. And the first speaker will be senior lecturer, Dr. Muhammad Zairul bin Muhammad Nur. I will briefly read his biography here. Dr. Muhammad Zairul is a senior lecturer at the Department of Architecture, University Putra Malaysia, Serdang. He graduated from Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies with honors and Bachelor of Architecture with honors from the IIUM and Master of Science in Architectural Studies from the UPM and PhD in Management in the Built Environment from TU Delft. He has plenty of experiences related to the virtual learning and blended learning since he is the MOOC coordinator for Malaysia, Secretariat for Blended Learning and MOOC, UNESCO Asia Pacific Education Chapter, and Certified Professional Trainer for Atlas T for Asia Pacific. His presentation today will be titled, What to Look Forward on Architecture Curriculum in the New Normal Period, with focus on design studio subject. So Professor Muhammad Zairul, the time is yours.
All right. Shall I share my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes. Please begin.
All right. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. Thank you so much to the organizing committee, to APTARI, and especially to I think Architect Ahmad Saifuddin Mutaki that personally invited me to the session, and also to Architect Adrianta from Education Chapter Malaysia, PAM. All right, so I don't have much time. I was given only 15 minutes, so hopefully I can manage. I think I have a lot of things to share today, but if you want to get to know more, you can just go to YouTube to look further on this. I'm sharing this new methodology on studio teaching, which I already practice for the past, I think 2 years. And then since this COVID-19, it become much more prevalent, and then it become much more suitable to meet to the situation. And I think it might be not that too late um, to greet safe to everyone, so that everyone will be in a safe and health condition during this COVID-19. Okay, so what to look forward on architecture curriculum in the new normal period? So I will focusing more towards the design studio subject, where what I'm going to emphasize is more towards how we can not change the entire methodology of studio teaching, but how we can innovate in our studio teaching education, so that we can keep abreast with the progress with whatever technology that already offered in the world, so that we can still catch up with all the technology. All right, as being discussed just now, as being introduced, I'm also MOOC coordinator for Malaysia, Secretariat for Blended Learning and MOOC UNESCO Asia Pacific. So I'm also actively promoting blended learning in this Asia Pacific region. And just last 2 months, I was in Telecom University promoting my methodology. And unfortunately, it's not for architecture school, but it's for art school. But since this is a studio teaching, so it works both for architecture and also studio related. Okay, so what is studio education? We know that studio is a place to facilitate design learning, and teacher and students weave together into a coherent conceptual framework. All right, so imagine the studio is like an environment like a professional architect might work. So the studio master become like the boss of the, or like the superior of the company, and then the student become the staff or the workers. So somehow we try to mimic the same scenario like in the professional office. I would say this is also studio is also the we need to look into the new delivery modes and technologies that may help us to criticize the very own relation of master and student that we have kept nurturing over generation. So this facilitating the student, how the master, the teachers, the studio master become the facilitator. It's much more challenging in this COVID-19 pandemic era. Okay, as educators, this has brought us out of our comfort zone, because we are so used to teach as we are taught, and now intellectually we are challenged how we want to change, okay, the way we taught for this entire for this the whole education period. So the new development modes and technology may help us to criticize the very own relation of master and student that we have kept nurturing over generation. All right. But still, our studios are essentially a box art, 19th century studio, design studio with the addition of screens and to suggest more open and challenging relation. All right, so what are the challenges in the studio education during COVID-19? A bit of background study. Studio represent significant departures from other pedagogy approaches. Studio is a casual place where meeting times are specified, but students gather and disperse haphazardly. This is based on Kosidowski 1996. So studio is a natural place where the student come in and come out, so that they can discuss, they can bring in materials inside, they can do models, they can do a lot of things inside the studio. But the problem is that we teach remains in the latent of I teach as I was taught attitude. So during this COVID, there's no way we can still teach the way that we taught before. So ironically, most design educators and learners place high value on innovation, creativity, and critical thinking, but ignoring the innovative teaching methodologies. All right, one of the biggest challenges in architecture education will be this disconnect from the resources dedicated to materials, fabrication, and physical implication of producing things into the world. So this is what happened during COVID-19. So therefore, studio remains a productive and place to gather ideas and work, but remains unknown on how it should respond to the burst of technologies and COVID-19. All right, so okay. Let me just catch up with the time. Um, I'm just afraid I will go beyond the time. Okay, all right. Okay, so so this suggests a key to innovation in studio teaching and learning, and how we want to innovate teaching and learning in this COVID era. Okay. This is some of the student feedback that we gathered during this COVID-19. The survey was aimed to gather feedbacks from architecture students in all university and polytechnics in Malaysia during MCO. This survey started from 17th April until 30th of April. During the survey, we had gathered 202 responses, including suggestion on how to improve academically during this MCO period. So I just want to highlight that these two survey feedback. Okay, the first one is when we ask what do you think about the online classes, online presentation, online grid, I think the highest response is inconvenient. All right, okay. So the inconvenient essentially lead to the second graph. What are the problems you face during the online classes? It's about technical problem, Wi-Fi, and device problem. So we also still experiencing some disruption, especially when everyone's using internet. So there's a disturbance in terms of the connection, and then it somehow disturb the process of the learning. All right, so we're going to highlight that. Therefore, I came up with this term. We call it pedagogy. Pedagogy is a combination of theory of pedagogy and also cybergogy. I will explain a bit about this. Solar methodology, studio-oriented learning environment methodology, is inspired by self-determination theory by Dacey and Ryan in 2008, and real model by Grebinger and Dunlap, and All-Seat framework by Lee and Hanafin. You can read more. If you Google Soul methodology, you can find more information about this methodology, where it's emphasis on the aspect of engagement, support, scaffolding the student, and guidance, and coordinate them to create a more holistic studio experience. Actually, those components are already available in the studio, but we just emphasize and we make it much more structured so that the studio coordinator will have easier way to coordinate the studio. So how we implement this soul methodology? So we try to innovate teaching and learning methodology in the studio, and then we initiate self-regulated learners in the learning process. So if anybody knows about heterogogy, so this is actually a friction of the heterogogy, and to promote critical thinking and thoughtful discussion, to increase architecture graduate skills and collaboration and online competency towards IR 4.0 and industrial revolution, and to reduce teaching burden in the studio and promote independent and leadership skill. As I mentioned, this methodology not only been implemented in Malaysia, we already called to Telkom University last 2 months, but because of this COVID, we have to stop the monitoring. We already tested in arts studio that involve fashion studio, fashion and textile arts studio, but not architecture yet in Indonesia. All right. So, what are the original and evolving goals of studio methodology? There are three main components under the framework of SOL methodology: the lecturing, assessment, and sharing. Okay, so under this framework, we aspire to enhance the relationship between tutorial and sharing, assessment and input lecture, facilitate guidance during the observation, and the expected outcome of the project. We know that during this COVID, we need to really use the technology. We cannot ignore the technology. We cannot use if there's among us that really hate technology, we really hate how to operate this online teaching. Okay, there's no choice during this COVID-19. There's no choice. We have to implement, and we have to use it. Okay, for to still teaching our because the teaching business is still ongoing at the moment. So therefore, what I combine here is pedagogy is actually new teaching and learning approach. And the methodology is the SOL module, okay, between it's actually combination between pedagogy and pedagogy. Pedagogy is actually peers among peers teaching and education, so that the peers, which means that the students help each other and then nurture each other learning and teaching. They decide about what they want to learn, and then we, as the lecturer, we become the facilitator. Cybergogy is that we involve technology, we involve IT inside this teaching. Although we already use it in our studio, for example, we use Revit, we use AutoCAD, we use other software, but we will talk about synchronous and asynchronous later on. Sorry, a bit rushed because of the 50 minutes. Okay, as I mentioned, the first component is the lecture. So now the lecture become the facilitator. All right. So you take in charge of the you let the student to take charge of their own teaching and learning. So you become the facilitator. So the student will be given beforehand what they're going to be, for example, if there's an online lecture, they will know what type of lecture that they will have, okay, and then they will change the lecture, the online lecture, the lecture to become like a debate, a role play, or a forum, or any other type of delivery rather than you giving the input lecture. All right. This is online lecture that we use during this COVID-19, and also previously we already used Zoom, WebEx, and also other type of online teaching materials. The good thing about the Zoom is that it support the sketches that so that the lecturer can can comment the idea from the screen. All right, 3 minutes left. All right. At the same time, we monitor the students' progress in the Padlet. So whatever sketches that are being done by the student will be monitoring in Padlet, so that the student cannot skip because the idea, the process is very important in architecture. We cannot ignore that. You cannot just expect students to come up with a final product. They need to have a progress. So in the Padlet, we monitor everything. So the sharing is where the student will share the idea, so that we have one-to-one tutorial with the student, but right now the student tutor among themselves, so they share their materials, and then they bring reading materials, so that if, for example, in a group we have 5, if one student bring 3 materials, they have 15 materials already. All right. And then the assessment is also very important, where we use Google Classroom. I think most of you are aware of the Google Classroom. We can just ask them to upload their project, and then we can evaluate the assessment. Okay, this is also the debate between synchronous and asynchronous. So we aware of this. There are some students that have very low internet access, so we allow for asynchronous. where the lecture will be pre-recorded so that they can watch whenever they have time, and then they can watch through WhatsApp, because WhatsApp have a lower connection compared to the other medium. All right, I'll just run through. So this is we have a full assessment how we want to assess our student during this COVID, and using this methodology. This is the rubric, and then at the end of the day, we want to, as just mentioned just now, the learning outcome is very important. So despite this, the marks that we already determined for the student, we want to nurture a future architect that emphasize on the leadership and entrepreneurship in terms of participation, because when they go out, the participation in the society is very important. The teamwork among the teammate, and then the ethics and the professional, how they deal among the friend. So we will evaluate all of this, and also the communication and the lifelong learning. All right. So these are the details of the rubric. Okay. And this is how we did before COVID, and this is how we innovate during this COVID. So everything online. As I mentioned already, this SOL methodology module already being trained in Philippines, Indonesia, and also Brunei. So if anybody in any school interested to know about this, you can contact me, and then we can arrange for the briefing and then more explanation. And then this SOL framework also already got copyright from Malaysia IPO. Okay, we have package training day, first round and second final round. We can teach also universities how to use this methodology in their studio teaching. All right. Last but not least, this
I would say
this
is the first in the world
video
that
about
have
SOL methodology. Just
a very comprehensive step by step of how you want to run your studio. We have three main components, which is tutorial sharing. Second one is the input lecture, and the third one is the assessment.
Discussion, we feel more comfortable, and the environment will be less stressed or more casual.
The first part is the tutorial sharing. The sharing in the studio previously is between the lecturers and the students. So the students become the one who just receive the information from the lecturers. Okay, there's no vice versa. So in this two technique, we allow the student to actually share between their peers. So how we do it is that from the sharing session, for example, the student will told to bring their own materials to the studio. Okay, for example, in a group of 5 or 6, if one student brought maybe 3 at least articles or 3 reading materials, now we already have 15 materials to be discussed in the studio. So so the discussion in the studio becomes dynamic, and then a lot of points to be discussed rather than just waiting for the lecturers to give input. And the second step is usually tutorial and sharing, where apart from the sharing among the student can also critics among their peers before lecturers as a facilitator, which will just wrap up the session.
When we are critiquing each other, it is kind of like a reminder to ourselves on our own progress.
And then the third element, which is the assessment. During the assessment, we allow the students to actually assess their peers. They will be given the rubric, they will given the graduate that only focusing towards the marks entirely for their academic path. Okay, but they need to have like a teamwork spirit. They need to have a professional and ethics. They need to have communication and lifelong learning. They need to have this leadership and entrepreneurship. Soul is no longer a module. It's going to be a methodology of teaching in creative studios.
We learn together and then we get the knowledge from each other in a group.
To cover Soul module, we try to complement with several alternatives. For example, we can come up with coding.
All right, so I think my time is up. For more information on the Soul methodology, you can just go to YouTube and then find SOLE methodology, and then more information there. Thank you so much for the opportunity given. Okay, I give back to the chairman.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zairul, for sharing about your soul methodology. And yeah, I think it's quite an interesting framework in relating lecturing, sharing, and assessment that perhaps we can move forward to this current situation. For the participants, the question and answer will be taken, will be conducted after the first panel, after the third speaker. So if you have any questions for Dr. Zairul, you can write your questions in the chat space. Just type your questions there, and then we will select some of the questions to be discussed later. We will move on to the second speaker from Hong Kong. So this second presentation will be delivered by Dr. Rufina Sharmila Tilakaratne. Dr. Rufina is the Associate Professor and Program Director at the Department of Architecture, Chuhai College of Higher Education. She is an academic and an architect specialized in environmental sustainability with over 20 years international experience in academia and practice. In 2018, she has been awarded the RIBA Fellow title in recognition of her contribution to academia, research, and practice. As an educator, she has demonstrated her teaching performance through achieving Teaching Excellence Awards in 2019. Dr. Rufina is also an active researcher with various research funds from public and private sources. Her research focuses on urban thermal comfort, livability, and resilience of high-density cities. She is the finalist in Hong Kong Green Building Awards in the Research and Planning category and has won merit awards in several other design competitions. She is a regular speaker at international conferences on architectural science and sustainability. She has organized several conferences such as Modular Construction Conference, Climate Change Adaptation Conference, and Resilience and Robust Cities Conference. Prior to joining academia, Dr. Rufina held senior positions at large international architectural firms, advocating and leading design teams to integrate environmental design and the corporates to establish sustainable operation. She extended her passion and expertise through her roles as a green building faculty at HKGBC and through her active engagement in Architectural Science Association Australia and New Zealand and RIBA Hong Kong Chapter Education Committee. So Dr. Rufina today will share to us about the approaches to architecture design studio in the new normal period from Hong Kong perspective. Dr. Rufina, the time is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Paramita. Can you all hear me? Let me see my screen. Okay. So let me. Can I operate it from my side? Is it okay? Dr. Paramita, can I operate it from my side because you have given me this screen from there. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you operate from your side?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Let me share the few options. No, there is because you have shared the screen. That's okay. That's okay. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Let me get mine. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Right. So thank you for the introduction, very generous. And thank you for the invitation for us to share our perspective in Hong Kong. I think when it comes to Hong Kong, not only architectural education, it affects our living and everything in Hong Kong, this high density situation. And when the pandemic came, it was a big concern about the density, and also asking students to work from their homes, which are, you will be alarmed the size, like 15 square meters, some of the houses. And then the whole family lives in 15 square meters. And imagine somebody having to stay at home the whole time with the parents and with other siblings, and learn online with Zoom on all the day. So, what I'm going to show you is that how we have been running the studio and other courses, because they are kind of integrated in a normal year, and then what are the kind of shifts that we had to make in order to adapt to this new normal period that is called. Let me show you. Right. So in a typical year, we have 3 projects. The first project is, I'm running only the Master of Architecture studio. So I'm going to actually share a lot of my experiences about the Master of Architecture studio. For Master of Architecture studio, we get students from different countries, mostly from Australia and the UK. So since they come from different schools, we actually do not know what their skill sets are. So the first project pretty much is to sort of like align their skills, and for us to also gauge what level of competencies and how we should navigate for the rest of the semester. So the first project is called Performing Skins, and what we do is that we take a existing building and we give them a program inside the existing building, and then we ask them to develop a building envelope that would actually facilitate the best operation of the function that the program that we proposed. So typically that's about 5 to 6 weeks. We have studios twice a week, so this is about like 10 to 12 sessions. And what they do is they do daylight simulation, mostly daylight simulation, ventilation simulation, using software. And also we have a lot of instruments, so they go to the field and measure on-site measurements, and then they integrate that and come up with a new facade or even building envelope, like rooftop daylighting strategies. So this is the first project. So this went on because we start the school in September. So there was no impact for this studio if you consider 2019-20 academic year. The second project is a social sustainability project, pretty much taking one of the current social issues, like most of the time we take the growing elderly population, not only in Hong Kong, I mean around Asia. So that's the kind of project that we do, and that is more research oriented project and more design. That is the time they get to design their own facilities, because the first project is a given building. And the last project is the one that actually was really impacted, because the last project is the one that we do outside Hong Kong. We usually go to Thailand because I worked for UN before. So with my links, I initiate projects in Thailand, and we look at very crucial issues like flooding or urban farming and rural farming in Chiang Mai and things like that. So mostly the flooding. And this year we were almost about to go there, and we could not go because the whole COVID thing came up, and then the travel restrictions and things like that. So I'm going to take you through the journey, what we do, and then how we shifted from there, right? So this is the Thailand project that I was talking about, the overseas trip. The learning value of this one is not so much about just learning from the teachers in Hong Kong. But this is also for them to really engage with the government officials and the community, the villagers and experts of flood modeling and all that, opportunity for them to really go into government bureaus and talk to people and have that exposure, and also talk to the villagers. So this was not, I mean, we couldn't go ahead with that project this year. And another very important project that we do, I mean, Zhuhai is a very sort of like a unique, I would say, a boutique school. We are not big like Hong Kong U or Chinese University. Our studio's capacity is like for Master of Architecture is 50. So what we do is like we are very strong in sustainability. We have a number of experts in different areas of sustainability. So we try to integrate that into the studio. So this is one of the projects that we do with children. And last year it was very, very successful. It went in media. The project used recycled material and created creative furniture, engaging students, children, ethnic minority children. Designing with them and developing with them. So it was a very, very insightful project, but unfortunately we couldn't go ahead. So last year when we were doing it, we actually invited different professors from 5 different countries. So Taiwan, Belgium, New Zealand, Singapore, and the rest of us are from Hong Kong. So it couldn't do it this year. So a typical year, what we do is like our final presentations are always attended by practitioners or professors from the other universities, because that is kind of like a benchmarking exercise for us to know what they expect and what we do and things like that. We also go to those universities and do guest critiques. So this is, I mean, you can see the students are there, the guest critics are there, nobody's wearing masks and there's no social distancing. There are a lot of models. And so this is how a typical year, how we function. And we also use a lot of environmental like physical models to simulate, and also we have a lot of facilities, like even a wind tunnel in the school for students to really model and look at their how the wind flows and things like that, and also other different kinds of gadgets. So this year, we could not allow these facilities, access to these facilities because of the social distancing, 2 meter. You can't have more than how many people in a tiny wind tunnel room, right? So it didn't really work. And also our studios, every student has a desk space of 1.5 to 2 square meter. And the studios are 24-hour open. So basically students live there. And I mean, that is also a reason. I mean, the Hong Kong houses are very small, so students get that opportunity to stay in the studio and have a bit of a sleep and also work overnight. So that's kind of like the studio culture. I know it's happening in the other countries as well, but now during COVID, we could not allow studios to open because we will have no control over how many students, how close they stick together. So the studios were closed, and that was a major challenge from the students' point of view. And we also do a lot of site visits in taking students out and visiting green buildings or sites. This year could not do it. We actually had to shift the Thailand project to Hong Kong and ask students to do it by themselves in small groups. So it was like not really taking as a big group in a bus and go there, visit, not that way, but individually managing. They are master students there, so it was not a big difficulty for them to self-organize themselves. So still it was okay. So this is what I was just mentioning about, that we had to shift this overseas project, typically either Bangkok or Chiang Mai, to Hong Kong. One of the similar context, an island with fisheries and ecological value. So the project has to be shifted to a local context. But the experience-wise, like meeting government officials and all those UN officials, that is not possible to organize. I mean, again, this last semester, we were not quite prepared for COVID. It came as a shock to everybody. Fortunately, Hong Kong was never locked down, so we still could go out within the country, but within limitations. But we were not really ready to do how we would operate. But for the next year, I will share with you some ideas how we are going to do if this situation continues to keep the schools closed. So this year, during the COVID, what I could say actually is the output did not really change. I mean, it wasn't affected. Students performed, students produced the same level of work other than the physical models, because our physical model making facilities, the CNC room and the laser cutters and 3D printers, if we just allow them access, we don't know how close they will get. I mean, what will happen? There's no monitoring. So we didn't open. So the physical models were actually had to be replaced with digital models, which they do anyways, and a video of showing all the details and the experiences through the building and different sides of the buildings and all that. So this is the video. If we have time, I will go through it later. So some of the deliverables had to change. And the studio was completely conducted on Zoom. I'm not a big Zoom fan. I think Zoom has a lot of limitations when it comes to sketching. I mean, in Architectural Studio, as the previous speaker explained, there's a lot of dialogue and idea sharing between the tutors and the students at the same time, among the students. So there's a lot of this kind of things. That's how we learn. But in Zoom, it is very much limited. You can just take very simple tools to draw something. That's what you can do, right? But you can't do beyond that. And the site analysis, typically we do like in the studio together with the tutors. But this time the site analysis was actually done by individual student, but coordinated remotely, remote collaboration. So again, there are, that's not the best way to do a site analysis, but that was the best possibility we had. And the other tool we use besides Zoom is Moodle. This one we used for, I mean, we have been using this for few semesters now. And this year we had to really aggressively use it for assessment and for content management. And it's actually a very friendly tool, because for content management side, it's very, very good. But it's not a presentation tool. It's a tool for managing content, managing assessment and things like that. So I run quizzes every week. This is not for studio, this is for another course. And it gets auto-marked. So it's actually very good in a way that students can always access their material many times, and then also do go through their quizzes that they did previously. So we had to shift quite aggressively towards simulation works. Instead of doing really physical model simulation, we had to shift to software simulations. So we were doing a lot of this kind of simulations using Dialux and Velux, and previously we used Ecotect a lot, now not anymore because the license actually ran out. And now we use Environment and Rhino, CFD, and Ladybug, all this kind of software. Right. So, and then I did an online teaching effectiveness survey to understand how effective is this Zoom thing, if we are going to continue in the next semester, which I think is going to happen, the schools will not be open 100%. So we will still have to depend pretty much on Zoom quite a bit. So some of the things came up is that students still prefer face-to-face. Studio and theory courses, that's their best option. That's what they're asking for. But certain aspects improved, like self-discipline in terms of participation. Students also said there's lack of motivation, but that also pushes them to have self-discipline. And also, like in terms of efficiency, managing their content, and everything is already in digital format when it comes to final presentations. But in a typical studio, yeah, everything is in the sketchbook, and then in the last few months they will start putting into digital form, right? But here, because of the presentation mode, everything was digital since day one. So some of the other feedback was that it limits their ideas, the ability to express ideas freely. But again, some said, yeah, it helps me to prepare my stuff. So these were some of the feedback. I'm still running this survey for the whole school. This is just from the master's students. Just to explain what I mentioned before about the Hong Kong living situation, you can imagine having to study. So this is kind of how they live, a tiny bunk bed and next to a toilet that is shared by the whole family. And so some of the things students actually said is that one big problem I heard from the other speaker as well, the instability of the Wi-Fi system. And also background noise and technical problems, cannot concentrate when the other people in the house are moving around. So there are a lot of things, and some students even said that sitting in one place is like really tiring and it's not good for learning. So there are these challenges by learning from the house. That is something we will have to look into for planning for the future. Because Hong Kong is not in lockdown, we still can allow them to come, but we have to minimize like the studio occupancy to 50%. So we need to find new venues to operate, larger venues to operate. Right now, we have opened up our crit rooms for students to use, because the master or the final year thesis presentations are upcoming. So they need space to work. So we had to open up all the crit rooms for them to work with 2 meter distance partitioning, wearing masks, all that. So for the future, these are some of the ideas. I was thinking, like, since we are already in the virtual studio mode, cyber mode, why don't we push it forward? Why don't we really push it to the extent that we don't have to limit by the boundaries? We don't have to limit anything within Hong Kong. So these are the universities we typically collaborate with. So for the first project, I'm going to try and see how it goes, because it's a very short project. We could even make it even shorter to get all these schools engaged doing the same project, a short project, and with the inputs from different faculties. I think that's the beauty of virtual learning. You don't have to really depend on your own teachers. And you can also collaborate with students from the other universities and get to know people, make contacts and learn from other professors, because our exchange programs at the moment are not happening. We typically have exchange programs to Belgium, Taiwan, Thailand, Korea, and what are the other countries? New Zealand. So right now, all the borders are closed, so we cannot actually send out students, and they don't come to our school either. So this is a way that we can actually bridge that gap and then make it function in a normal way. So this is one of the ideas, actually, to get collaboration with the other schools. The other idea is that again, about borderless learning, to really open up to learn and collaborate with other universities, get other professors from other universities, and also access, sort of like library access, to access the other libraries in other universities and other facilities like license sharing or software sharing, collaborative group learning, and learning from practitioners. These things don't happen on a typical year because everybody is very busy, but and also our school is located away from the city center, so that is also difficult for practitioners or the professors from the other universities to travel. So, but with online learning, that is a beauty, that you don't have to really travel. I mean, look at that, we are now doing this conference in different countries. So that's all possible. I think we should really tap into that possibility and the positive side of online learning, although it is difficult. But at the same time, students' mood will change because they are thinking in different terms. But still, we have to address the issue of studying inside a house with the rest of the family members around. So this is where we are now strengthening our IT capabilities, laboratories, and the studio facilities for students to give options where they can actually, if they want to come to school, they can come to school and study online, then study online. Because if the government issue a mandate asking us to close the schools, we cannot open school officially, but we can give students choices to accommodate their learning needs. So I guess that's what I have to share. Happy to answer any questions about Hong Kong context or about what Zhuhai does. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rufina. Thank you for sharing about how you try to shift the learning method in your institution due to the current situation. And then the next, again, for all participants, if you have a question, please write in the chat, and we can discuss some of the questions later on, or Dr. Rufina can also respond directly in the chat. The third speaker will be from Taiwan, Dr. Kuo-wei Eliezer Godfrey Chu, also known as Dr. Casey. Unfortunately, due to the government policy on the restriction on the use of Zoom, Dr. Casey cannot join us in this Zoom platform. So he's going to present through the video that he sent to us, but he's around in terms that you can still ask questions, and we are still in contact with him through other media. So if you have any question, you can still ask about his presentation, and we will try to get the answer from him straight away. So before, I would like to introduce Dr. Casey. Dr. Casey is an assistant professor at the Tung Hai University Architecture Graduate School in Taichung, Taiwan. He specializes in biomimicry urbanism, urban design, urban morphology, and future city strategic spatial structure and design. His research area include nature-based intelligible urban design, Mars design mission for regenerative Earth, and ancient urbanism. He is interested in dialectical relationship between nature, culture, space sustainability, and futurism. Dr. Casey is serving as the director and conveyor-in-chief for Master of Architecture program. He established and chairs Sustainable Urbanism and Cities Future Design Think Tank, and founded the Regenerative Earth and Anthropocene Design Lab since 2016. He also sits in several academic review committees as well as design competitions for both locally and internationally. He was awarded Special Scientific Research Talent in 2014 and 15 from the National Science Council in Taiwan, and his research on future cities was awarded the Best Research Paper in the Premium International Conference in Civil Engineering and Architecture in Singapore in May 2019. Through the video presentation, Dr. Casey will present about the protocols and architecture and design studio in the new normal period from Taiwan perspective. Please play the video.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this web seminar. Well, regarding the protocols on architecture, cities, and landscape design studio in the new normal period, where everyone is affected by it. In terms of Taiwan's perspective, I can share a little bit of what our experiences is in the Donghai Architecture School. In particular, my own studio, Urban Design Studio. Well, there are some preconditions that needs to be observed in this pandemic. Well, like for instance, measuring temperature before you entering into the studio, and frequent hand washing, have a sanitizer ready at the doorway of the studio. So before the students comes in, they should observe all this. And if the space is allowed, keeping social distancing, like indoor in Taiwan, we are observing if it's indoor environment is 1.5 meters distance between each individuals. If it's outdoor, you can have a little bit loose on the distance. It's about 1 meter. And keep a track on all the individuals' travel histories. I think these are the preconditions or the measures that we all have to observe in this pandemic. Well, in terms of studio, in reality, it is quite difficult to observe the 1.5 meters spacing between students and between the instructors. And what we did is that we have a rearrangement of we invite the students only come to the studio if necessary. Otherwise, we rely on the online seminars, online technologies to see each other. So how is that being done for a studio setting? Sometimes people will still rely on the face-to-face interactions in order to get the design language or the message across. So this is what I have been doing. First, we need to know that I have been trying to limit the needs to travel to and from the studios as possible. And then also limit the needs to study on site. So if the studio is based on a site-heavy project, for instance, you have to travel to the sites for analysis or for study frequently. This is the opportunity to not to travel to the sites as much as needed. There are ways to do it. This is how I do it. I increase the pre-study component and the research components and relying on shared open data or relying on pre-studied preparations. So in that sense, in the past, design studios rely on the on-site studies. Would have to be changed so that the students would not be asked to travel so frequently and exposing themselves being affected by the virus. So if it's not going to be on-site studied, and there are things that needs to be done. First, the selection of topics and the thematic topics will be more on the issues based rather than site based. If we are dealing with, for instance, my studio, we're dealing with climate change. And in that sense that we can apply the design for climate change onto many common sites throughout the world. So in that sense that we increase seminar discussions rather than on-site study, relying on totally on-site studies. And number two, the second point is that try to establish the factors or the site analytical parameters from available outcome of the research. So the students will be increased in spending their time doing research, reading up, and then do a more frequent feedbacks or communication through the online medias. So they will report back to us more frequently. But each of the reporting that the instructor will guide them to formulate a parameter which is based on their study. So based on that parameter or the factors, design factors, such as if we study from the site which covers significant issues. So this is the time that we help them to structure the factors. The significant issues may be 5 or 6 factors influencing the site, influencing the eminence of the site, so that when we study, before we go into the design studios, these are important things to grasp. Then the next point is it is an opportunity in this pandemic for us all to move away from familiar site selection for the design studio. So traditionally, or in the past, we rely on the on-site studies method for design studios. And in the pandemic, this is what we are refocusing ourselves into these 3 points, which I'm going to illustrate. First, our studio can refocus on connecting to global issues. Then our studio also refocus on reflecting emerging issues. Third, we have the opportunity for studio to refocus on envisioning for the future. So by doing that, we can move away from this the need for a very frequent on-site visits. So issues, global issues, emerging issues, and future issues. So these are the things that my studios has been practicing in Donghai. And the next point is there will be a need to increase communication frequency by shortening the time taken in each online meeting and discussion with design students. That means the students, each time when we have online meetings, for instance, each students are asked to prepare. In the past, they are asked to prepare for 30 minutes individually to present their work, or even longer. But in this time, we are asked them to do preparations before they present their findings. So that will shorten the time, which means 15 minutes. So we reduce the reporting time, students' reporting time into half. And that is the time duration has been shortened. But we are increasing the frequency, which means if we are meeting twice a week for studio, then we will increase it to 3 times Therefore, by increasing the frequency, and we are allowed to shorten each individual student's presentation time. If that is possible, my studio, I find that is quite effective in terms of helping the student to prepare their design work. And in terms of the technical requirements, and all these are possible if we can keep it to the minimum. So in order to operate urban design studios in the pandemic, we do not need sophisticated technologies. All we need is a place where you can get online, either at home or in schools. Or the best is with your iPhone, cell phones, your smartphones. If you have access to those technologies, and we can operate the design studios. Okay, one last point here is that for us, when we are running the urban design studios, we are also focusing on the outcome, which means when we have instructed all that we can, when we have go online, having research seminars, feedbacks, discussions, when we have done all that, we still need to see what the students have put on the paper, or what they have sketched, or what they have drawn. And what I often ask them to do is to snapshot or to prepare and turn that into a PDF format, or even image files, and then send it over from their smartphone technologies. And in that sense, I can preview their work and give them the feedbacks even before the time that is needed to meet online. So a lot of work is actually work from home model, which means we get the preparation done at home. Okay, just to round up, remember some of the points that I have shared across. Focus on connecting to global issues. Focus on reflecting emerging issues. Focus on envisioning for the future. So these are the core, the fundamentals of an issue-based design studio. And in that sense, as if we are learning a lot from top-notch international design competitions, there's a good opportunity for my studios. We actually entering using the international design competitions in their design brief, and entering into the design as well as reformulating based on the international design competitions. So we are running our own so-called in-studio design competitions. So the way that we instruct the students is really affected by the pandemic like everyone else. And that's how we operate them. And just to conclude, for the student outcomes, we are asking them to print out and also pin up, but we limit the need for the other reviewers to be on site. So there will be just the instructors of the studio and with the students, but with enough spacings, and we are still having that final presentations as a pinmat. But of course, I have also run other graduate design studios, which I am not using a pin-up way. So they are actually submitting their work as if they were submitting for international design competitions. And in one semester, in one that durations, we have done 3 the capacity of 3 international design competitions. So in that sense, we are covering that the learning capacities that is necessary to get across to students in this pandemic. Thank you very much. That's all for my sharing today. Good day.
Okay, thank you. Okay. For the presentation, yeah, we already have 3 presenters with interesting topic to discuss. Hello, I just want to make sure that my voice is clearly.
Clear. Yes, clear.
Yeah. So we already have several questions from the participants, and I think there are also some questions in the YouTube in the YouTube channel, in our YouTube channel. So I will just choose. Some of the questions have been answered by Dr. Zairul in the chat, but I think this is an interesting question about to Dr. Rufina, and how about the learning of architecture that is related to the sensing, because some of the activities can be changed into digital format or a virtual thing, but some of the activities that is related to sensing architecture, this might be difficult during the situation. Maybe Dr. Rufina, can you have your thoughts about this?
I would like to understand what he or she meant by sensing. Is it the spatial experiences in architecture, or site visits, or what?
Yeah, I think what is meant here is that some of the activities depends on the direct relationship with the place and with the space, and that might be difficult during the
Yes, okay, agree. Yes, one part of the pedagogy is actually to learning by visiting places and experiencing places, which was not possible during COVID because of the regulations about social distancing. So that part of pedagogy had to be replaced by other ways of looking at it. For example, one student did a studio project about a smell experiencing center in a fishing village. So the whole thing was not being able to really go, and I mean, there's no such places in Hong Kong, smell experiential centers, but he had to do a lot of research in order to understand how these spaces look like and simulate them in order to see these kind of effects, pressure, fluid dynamics, things like that. So yes, a real experience of going to a place and understanding spaces and learning from how other architects have designed and what these spaces mean to the function and to the users. That part wasn't possible because I also take students to a lot of green buildings to experience internal environmental quality and talk to users. But this time we were not allowed to even access these places. So yes, that was challenged.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Another question that I will take from the audience is maybe this one can be asked by regarding the first year students. So because the first year student never have any experience, little or none experience with the studio environment. So how do you think they will deal with this new normal pedagogy and how the lecturer can engage with them? Perhaps Dr. Zairul, you can share your thought about this.
Right. We always have a problem with this the fundamental part of the studio, where especially for the freshies, they need more nurturing parts from the lecturers, because when we tested this SOL methodology, is meant for master students because they are much more independent, and then they can, they much more experienced. We also this is the challenge, because when we talk about especially in Malaysia, we're still doing this manual drawing. We're still doing this manual sketching, technical drawing, and everything. But based on my experience in Delft, Netherlands, the architecture is already changed. They no longer using this manual training, but rather doing manual using computer. So they sketch using the sketch tab, and then straight away transfer digitally to the computer. So maybe it's about time for our region to to think about this is the new norm that we need to to change also. I think it needs a debate whether we can change the. I know some of the conventional architect still think that no, we cannot scrap this out. This is our core business to nurture the freshies. But yeah, this is something that we need to think about. So maybe in the next future is how we want to adapt technology, but still using the sketches, so and then transfer it to the computer. So yeah, that's I think one of the idea.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaid. Another question, which is I think very important, is about the how we conduct the crit of the design studio with this online teaching, online platform, and also maybe this is also related to another question about what kind of rubric, how is the rubric in the assessment of the teaching. So the first one perhaps for Dr. Zairul, and the second one is for Dr. Rufina.
So it's about assessment, right?
About the crit.
About
How
the
do you conduct studio crit in this on?
Okay. As mentioned, we changed from physical to online Zoom. If you hate Zoom, you can still use other tools. We have WebEx and so other online materials. And it depends on the capability of the student. If the internet is not that good, we allow to use WhatsApp. Okay, so because normally WhatsApp is will not take much data compared to Zoom and other materials. So we can alternate, and then just I think last 2 weeks, government of Malaysia already allow gathering for smaller group, not more than 25. So right now we interchangeably we change between physical, face to face, and also online. Mostly we focus face to face towards problematic student, and online towards student who can who need less monitoring. So yeah, interchangeably we can use both face to face and also online.
Thank you. Dr. Rufina, perhaps you can share.
Right. I will share a little bit about both questions. For Master Studio, we were allowed to actually have the physical presentations. They're mature students, they know how to self-organize, and that time the requirement was not more than 8 people in a room. So what we did was we only allowed the student who present and the tutors in the room. So everybody was wearing masks, so it was kind of safe. And for the bachelor students, other than for the final year students, all the presentations had to be done online. So what we suggested was that students to upload their work into a cloud drive, so the teachers have access to it, and they can look at it parallel when they are presenting, if they want to go back and forth or see the sequence of the panel layouts and things like that. So it was still done online, but with access from both sides, having the resources to look at their work. all the models were done at home, so they're not the real professional kind of models, but we asked them to upload their photos of the models, whatever they have, all the material, and then that's how it was done. Some of the skill sets were not able to deliver, particularly year one in Zhuhai. It's very hands-on. They depend very much on hand sketches and technical drawing by hand for period of time before they get into digital, and they make a lot of models. So some of the skills that were not able to deliver last year, we are planning to run a crash course soon after the next semester starts, if the school really starts. So 2 weeks before they get into year 2. So that's how it was. Regarding the rubrics, yes, I had to amend the rubrics, because the rubrics, one of the requirements is to actually have physical models and also verbal presentations and presentation panels. All that is in the rubrics. The rest of it, our rubrics actually, a very big part of our rubrics constitute of a research part and the design process documentation part. And the real outcome and graphics like that is actually a smaller part. So the bigger part, still we could go ahead and ask them to do the research, and which is a good time to actually do the research online, and they have plenty of time. They don't have to travel to school, they save time. And so that part was still there. And the design process documentation happened since day one, because they were documenting what they were doing digitally and then finally presenting. So the things that actually had to take out from the rubrics were the physical models and presentation and panels and printable panels and stuff like that. But we still ask for those things. Without the physical models, we ask for a video clip of their project, inside, outside, and certain details. And we increase the need for detailed drawings. So that way we can actually see how things, if they were making the models, and that translated into a 2D format instead of a 3D format. So that's how we managed.
Thank you, Dr. Rivina. So for the last question in this panel, I would like to highlight the question from Ibu Ruli about for Dr. Casey. Could you extend your explanation about the idea of focusing on global and future issues rather than understanding science conventionally? Dr. Casey already responded here. I will read the response, the answer. About the idea of focusing on global and future issues, these are needed to rely upon open sources and media research more intensively than the conventional site visit. And because of this, the need for frequent site visits can be reduced and mitigated for the COVID period. And by responding to global issues such as pandemic, urban, and public space design, as a topic, are quite timely to respond for design relevance, especially in this special pandemic time. I think this is quite some interesting thought for us to consider when thinking about our design studio in the future. Okay, I will continue to the, thank you for the 3 speakers for the sharing about the shifting of the learning platform. Now we will move on to the second panel, which will consist of 3 other speakers from Indonesia and from India. The first speaker in the board here is Dr. Aswin Indraprasta. Dr. Aswin Indraprasta is Associate Professor in Computational Design, the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development at Institut Teknologi Bandung, or ITB. Dr. Aswin is currently the Deputy Head 2 of Architecture Education of Ikatan Arsitek Indonesia, Jawa Barat, and the Vice Chairman of Asosiasi Perguruan Tinggi Arsitektur Indonesia, or APTARI. He obtained his PhD from Shibaura Institute of Technology, Tokyo in 2011, and then from 2012 became the member of Architecture Design Research Group in ITB. His field of research is in computational design, BIM, design representation, and modeling. From 2016 to 2020, Dr. Aswin is the head of undergraduate program of Architecture, and recently he has been appointed as the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs. He is the member of ITB Board of Reviewer and also the member of ITB BIM Development Team, member of Computer Aided Architectural Design Research in Asia, and also the International Peer Review Committee for CAADRIA. In professional practice, Dr. Aswin, also the Associate Architect and BIM Advisor for BITA and Arcon Engineering, is involved as Deputy Project Manager in several projects in Bandung, Yogyakarta, and some other parts of Indonesia. Dr. Aswin will present maybe more specific about how to deal with this COVID pandemic situation, sharing about the practice in ITB. Dr. Aswin, please, the time is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor Paramita, for the introduction. I hope all of you can hear my voice, yeah? Okay, I'd like to share my screen for the presentation. Okay, do you all see the screen share?
Yes, Pak
Okay.
Aswin.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is my title of the presentation. So actually, we are now facing the same challenges in architectural education, mainly because of the new paradigm already mentioned by previous speakers. So we don't say why we facing these issues, but mainly we would asking how we can overcome these issues. I would like to highlight three particular aspects about this strategy to overcome this issue. The first one is how to ensure the learning objective of studio-based courses due to the pandemic and embracing the new normal afterwards. The second is how to minimize the gap of learning objective between conventional studio and full online studio or hybrid studio. The third one, how we can embrace a new paradigm of a studio-based learning environment. So as with previous speakers, we conducting small assessment on our students in early June 2020 regarding the experience they have been facing during implementation of online based courses from the beginning of lockdown until the end of the semester, which is by the end of May. So this study conducted by one of our lecturer. So actually there are mixed answer from the student regarding the work from home or the work in the studio. But the main issue here is to the student has no idea how they can join the studio offline or remain online for the next semester and afterwards. In our case, most of the some of the students don't have problem whether they can continue their work from home or in the studio. But of course, there are some issues with the psychological aspect of the students and also with the tutor and the lecturer. Our university also conducted assessment to all the students by the end of the semester. And the summary I highlighted here, 70% of students prefer synchronous video platform for the two-way communication between lecturer and the students using Zoom, Meet, or other means of platform. And 20% of them prefer streaming content because they can play whenever they want to play the lectures. 60% of students feel overloaded with online assignment more than regular assignment, because they feel that when the lecturer convert the usual or regular course into the online, so they feel the assignment is overload, overburdened with the more than the regular assignment. Almost 70% of the students did not enjoy online courses by the lecturer because they feel bored with the media, and they feel it didn't help to understand the content. And this is the main issue with our application to online platform by the end of this semester. But the other way, almost 50% of the students have positive expectation that online course will make their lecturer perform better. 48.2% of the students feel that online course is boring and not interesting and not attractive. So they feel it wasting their time. About the new protocol for the studio, I think there are 4 aspects to be considered. The first is how we educate the new protocol for the studio for all, not only the student, but also lecturer, teaching assistant, and also supporting staff. The second is we all have to understand the situation and make changes, not in the future, but now. The third one is we have to embrace new things now, not tomorrow, not next month, but now. And the last one, something never changed regarding the migration from the regular pedagogy aspect to the online base. That is empathy, compassion, and encouragement. The new protocol for studio also have 3 factors that I think the most important, that already mentioned by previous speakers. The first one is how to maintain the studio interaction between mentor and the student, the tutor and the student. This is the key, because the studio interaction nurtures the discipline, motivation, and also self-appreciation. This previous speakers already mentioned and proposing the establishment of new digital platform to accommodate the pin-up, for example, reviews and crits as metaphor for the usual studio culture interaction. The second one is how we can maintain the critical thinking of the student to select, to store, to process, and to cultivate information, because a new normal for the studio and for other things is information. How we can increase our student ability to have critical thinking to process the information. The third one is embracing digital process based on digital data, means the digital and computing literate. Previous speakers already mentioned about the envisioning the vision, issue-based studio rather than site-based studio, and all involving the digital and how to cultivate the potential of the digital data. The last one is we have to find out the new media to ease and accommodate, and also the affordability of the gesture, tactile, and two-way interaction between mentor and students, or also between student and students. This involving 2 changes in studio. The first one is change in pedagogy, how to deliver knowledge, how to providing interaction between one-to-one, one-to-many, peer interaction, and also how to increase the personal or interpersonal development. The next the preparation is change in platform or medium using blended learning, synchronous or asynchronous medium, flipped classroom, multimedia, and social media. So these changes involving all of the stakeholders in architectural education, not also students, but also lecturer. We have recommendation from the university of developing online based course. The first is the concept of online course is learner-centered education, increasing students' engagement through exploration and self-study in a monitor and programmed way. The second, online course must be interactive. This one is hard to practice and hard to implement, because the development of interactive media is not just as simple as converting regular media into the online platform. This interactive must be both synchronous and asynchronous modes with the proper platform. Next, university mandates that every faculty need to provide studio room for recording multimedia with proper equipment. And next, we have to develop our own protocols for production, assessment, evaluation, and monitoring online courses. So in our case, during pandemic, hopefully by the end of 2020, all studio and courses are online based. But afterwards, beginning in 2021, we will have a hybrid studio and courses using blended learning and flipped classroom. So yeah, the concept and strategy to begin a new protocol for studio focusing on safe and healthy state for lecturers, students, and supporting staff by avoiding a new cluster, endorsing work from home in current situation. And hybrid studio approach is likely become a new normal for studio courses, still with multi-layered safety protocols. The next is preparing or reformulating the pedagogy, endorsing design by data, already mentioned by previous speakers, increasing the capability and for the modeling and simulation, preparing workspace for the hybrid studio, physical distancing, room capacity, cross ventilation, circulation not less than 2 meter width, avoiding crowded space, and etc. And also preparing schedules, hours-based studio work, that strict studio for offline discussion and tutorials. The next is preparing infrastructure, for example, subsidized internet data package for the lecturer, academic assistant, and also students, providing or lending a PC, laptop for the lecturer and students, because we closed our computer lab during the pandemic, and we utilize that computer to lend to the students who need, and also lecturer who need for the work from home. And also providing tablets with stylus for lecturer, because we know the two-way interaction is impossible with the flat monitors and also mouse and keyboard. And then to minimize this gap, we have to provide the medium that mimicking the pencils and also paper. And also we begin to look for virtual collaborative platform, as also mentioned by Professor Zubair from Malaysia, by using Padlet, for example. The last that maybe consequence of this online base is online storage, because previously we didn't prioritize the online storage, but in the beginning of the online based studio, this is become the big issues. So like Professor Rufina mentioned, we also utilize the online platform based on Moodle for blended learning, as visualized here. some studio already use this to deliver the lecturers and also to for online submission and grading. Of course, this has some limitation, but in the meantime, this platform is okay for the time being. Another platform for blended learning is using Google Classroom and also YouTube channel for asynchronous model, asynchronous mode, I mean, and also we utilize Zoom and Meet for synchronous mode, including grid session and also Viva with small classes. Another important is online platform for exhibition and portfolio. We all migrate to online base, as we can see here, because we no longer, we have to adapt to the new media to have appreciation for the students. So we develop our own protocols based on the general protocol by the national regulation and also university regulation. We develop the hour-based studio schedule, limiting the group of the students based on the year and also studio groups. Offline meeting is complementary of online course. So maybe for the next semester, beginning the next year, offline meeting is complementary, not mandatory. This is part of the new normal. Next, also de-densification of the studio by re-layouting workstation, limiting access to library, adopting online access, and also we have to redefine outdoor space for the workspace for the students. Also, in our building, we have to reconfiguring the circulation route that dividing the outcome and income students. Yeah, in the last slide, we at least in our context, we hope for the best, but also prepare for the worst. In education, formulating hybrid studio for a hybrid method for studio by exploiting potential of the digital data and platform. But we also have to educate the digital and computing literacy for lecturer and students, and also providing technical assistance for tutorial, both for the lecturer and also the assistant. The next preparation that we have to process is preparing or evaluating, improving blended learning with integrated multimedia delivery, assignment, submission, and also grading method. We have to develop multimedia channel for video courses collection. We have to provide the cloud storage, online subscription for software, data, and other services, and also online platform for exhibition. Thank you. I think that's all my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Aswin. I think it's very informative presentation that is very useful for all the participants that we have ideas about what kind of things that we need to prepare for the new normal. We will continue to the next presenter. The next presenter will be from India, and he's going to share about the curriculum content that is related to the building resilience. I will first read his short biography here. Professor Durganant Balsafar is the Dean of Savitna College of Architecture in Chennai, India. After graduating from SACEPT Ahmedabad and ETH Zurich, Balsafar worked in Paris and Zurich. From returning to India and then returning to India to work in the atelier of Pritzker laureate Balkrishna Doshi. Balsafar founded ARCAS, Human Settlements Research Collaborative, and is involved in future cities, environment and health, disaster mitigation, rural and war refugee rehabilitation. Balsafar is the member of Barcelona AMB UN Post Habitat 3 and Berlin Climate Policy 2050 program. Balsafar has been on various prestigious juries and teaching in Indian and international universities, member of Chennai Master Plan and Monitoring Committee, and Program for New Direction in Education by the COA. His works were exhibited in Croatia and Berlin. Savita College of Architecture collaborated with ARCASIA for International Winter School with participation from universities from Sri Lanka and Malaysia and collaboration with Cambridge University and Curtin. Professor Balsafar will explain about the curriculum on building resilience within social, economic, and cultural aspect in the new normal period. Please, Professor Balsafar.
Thank you very much. I have to thank the organizers and ARCASIA and APTARI for this invitation. And the very fact that there's a new normal means that we are having a seminar of this kind. In fact, this is the first time I'm even having a seminar with Southeast Asia. It's always been very large seminars in India. So I'm grateful, and I think most of the speakers have given very valuable points. Some of the points are there in my presentation, so I think I will go faster. Could I share the screen and start?
Yes, please.
Can you just come here? Anil? How do I? Yeah, it's good. Is it shared?
Yes.
Wait,
Yes, I think it is. Yeah, it is sharing. Okay.
Thank you. So I think I will, since most of the speakers have covered a lot, even though it's there in my slide, I may move a little faster. And since it's 15 minutes, those who want, I've given certain Insta pages and certain Facebook pages or online where you can refer to it in detail or write to us. I have been dealing with disaster mitigation for the last 30 years, right from the Gujarat earthquake, the tsunami, and so I have been involved with this and looking at the social, economic, and cultural. So when this new normal or when this pandemic came about, it has taken all of us by a shock, a surprise. And we realized that on that day, we had to really change the entire studio program. So I will just discuss how we change the studio program. The curriculum is still in discussion on how we should change it. It's very early stages, but I think we've got a sense of how to balance the two. And the idea was to shift the entire curriculum now into building resilience. Because of the uncertainty, and a lot of my experience of teaching in war-torn areas of Croatia, Yugoslavia, and also Sri Lanka, the students who come from war-torn war zones gave me certain insights on what we can do for this curriculum, because what we don't imagine in all this is it's not only digital, but the families and the students in their homes are carrying a lot of stress. And so the studio program had to also deal with that idea of stress. So this will more or less kind of very briefly give. So let's look at the context. Till now, the real studio was always a hands-on, what I call a gestural studio. And the internet was really a secondary tool. And now let's look at the major shifts in the last 3 months. Distant learning and the internet have become the primary tool, the primary mediator. But what are the possibilities? The possibilities are we've been able to bring in many more experts. So it's become interdisciplinary. We've been able to cross cultures and cross boundaries. So it's become intercultural. These possibilities were there earlier, but were not exercised with the same level of intensity as now. We've also managed to break across geographical regions. We're inviting architects from Southeast Asia, from South Africa, from South America. There's some time zone kind of coordination required. But what we are seeing is the possibility of a unified field of design dialogue. And this seminar itself is a valid, valuable indication that we can, even within Southeast Asia, the schools here, we could look at a new dialogue, of a studio. So how do we evolve these? Or this is really looking at our experience in the last 2 or 3 months. We've actually explored the virtual design medium for the last almost 3 or 4 years, but it had not taken on a primary role. We would invite jurors from out of the country. We had reviews with flat screens, but it was not like the core of the semester. And now I think it's shifting into the core. So we need to find alternatives. I think the greatest challenge that we have been discussing is when students go online, and if they were to go online all the time from morning to evening, would it alienate the students from the sensorial and physical space? Or can this become a platform for a mediation of both between the physical and the digital world? Because we found that resilience has several components in the cultural and social context. The first component, which we find is missing in the modern world, and which builds resilience, because we work in remote villages of India, remote towns. And in these remote villages and remote towns, we find they have a very strong community. And when they have a very strong community, the resilience gets built naturally. So one challenge for the studio, and it's been very interesting, is how do we build this learning community both on the digital and also encourage students gradually to create their own community links in wherever they were. We have students from the Northeast, 3,000 kilometers, miles from here. We have students in South India. India is a very large country. So we have students who have had to go back to their homes and really transform the way we've done the studio. So now if we look at it, we will see that this is a very creative process. We had to look at how to generate critical thinking. We had to have a knowledge of design, but the real challenge came in how do we uh, kind of allow our students to get knowledge, hands-on knowledge in construction practices, that too in a social distancing moment. Um, then of course there was, so it's really changing. The earlier studio, which came from the Bauhaus model, a very Western European model, has been highly faculty oriented. And if we look at the models in Southeast Asia or India, a great inversion is possible to shift it to a student centric mode. So one is the shift from the real physical to the virtual. The other is the shift that we can do from faculty centric to a student centric. What are the challenges in this? One is the nature of collaboration, virtual collaboration now between faculty and students, and many times interdisciplinary, students in different parts of the country. And we started generating new regional collaborations, because the northeast of India is very different from South India. The South India is very different from Rajasthan, where architect Shekhawat comes from. And so I think these itself are giving us a new opportunity to look at these cultural aspects of design, which were lost with the push of the modern movement. How do we understand this new digital landscape? One, we decided that let the internet or the cloud become the new connecting library. So we've begun connecting libraries across the world, and which are accessed by our students and faculty. We will be open to collaborating with the universities in Southeast Asia if ARCASIA can create a platform so that this web of vast knowledge, one, our own studio has vast knowledge, archives about India, and many of it is not yet uploaded on a shareable basis. So we've started that whole process of scanning and bringing it into a common shared platform. The other is that we got an opportunity at periodic intervals to make our studio project open to public. So we would invite government officials, we could invite, and it became much easier, more because it was more affordable now than earlier times. What did it do from the context of the student is that we encourage the student now to begin to become more conscious of their own environment. So the manner in which a student would make a place in the home, the manner in which a student would combine or go out, all these started becoming the new, what I would call the home laboratory design studio. We called it the home laboratory design studio. So that, and this, we encourage students from different paths to start communicating with one another. And we found strangely a new thing happened, which we had not really planned in the beginning, but then got planned now, is that the entire family has got involved in the studio and we've accepted it. So the grandmother is talking stories of their culture, we are documenting it, and which otherwise would have been lost. So we've opened up a completely new area of culture, which otherwise gets lost in the university because it's so focused and isolated. Now we are able to bring in all the cultures, and these become new programs and studio programs so that the students get time to videograph, document, the elders get stories of maybe pre-World War time, and these are really new revelations on embracing the digital. You will see in the earlier one, there is always a combination of the handmade, and so we have a lot of online programs actually teaching, faculty teaching students how to make models, physical models. This is a book which I would refer, New Directions in Sustainable Design. It doesn't really refer to the digital, but it looks at various processes of design. And one of the practices is our own practice in India, which has been documented of the 12 practices around the world. And I'll come to that. So if we look at it now, we will see that the university can create a database, and we have now created new courses for tactile and sensorial learning despite the digital. And this combination, we are open, these courses are, we are trying to keep open source. Whoever is interested may write to us and we can log them onto our courses for actual sensorial uh, perception and growing that perception along with the digital. So if we look at these 7 aspects, we have the design studio. We'll see that now the design studio has shifted from a combination of the manual and the digital. We are moving slowly into the hybrid studio mode, and right now it's largely synchronous, but students can post. There's a group created, and various formats, WhatsApp, Kaizala, various other formats, where the groups and including email, and so we've given them various kind of drives that they can upload on at any time. So what happens is sometimes the student is working at 11 in the night and feels like doing a drawing, they post it. If a faculty is awake, he can respond back, but it's not necessary a faculty has to respond back. But then this online and offline remains now this virtual studio where they can communicate at any time. We shifted the sites close to the student. So we changed all the programs so the students could travel to their site. They would video document it and send it back. But we also did another thing, is that we started mapping architects who are staying around the students' homes in the different parts of India. And now they have become our co-collaborators to guide the student if there is a site visit. So that's how we've dealt with the digital distance, by inviting new collaborators in these different regions. Model making is done both ways. You will see it's done both as digital and sensorial. 3D printing, we're teaching online 3D printing, but the printers as of now remain in a central location. It's not easy for each home to buy a printer. And so we're really looking at how can we diversify the 3D printer hubs. And theory is pretty much online, but we've been able to invite scholars from around the world, and we've just begun 3D modeling and examining the new potential of what we call the home lab. You'll see some of the GIFs that the students create of the models they're making in their homes. And I would say we are quite happy with the quality. And a lot of times the students have to have used packaging board, and because it was a lockdown, so a lot of it is actually made from uh, packages of refrigerator or food packages, and but it still come, I think it has come to a certain degree of clarity. I go back to the sensorial mode. This was an ARCASIA workshop we held in December in our school, and there were all the countries from Malaysia, Sri Lanka had come down, uh, looking at the hands-on processes, oral communication face to face, and faculty also at times sketching. So we go back to these memories, not because we want to say that this is the only way of doing it, but I think these memories begin to awaken the sensorial. And many of these practices today, we are able to connect the students still to craftsmen, so that in their own way, the students are attempting certain sensorial processes to get a touch of material. So if we look at this, uh, the framework of the new virtual studio, we have a knowledge resource which becomes like the brain. It collects all the resources, the library, the knowledge, the workings of the studio also get uploaded in a single drive. Then we have opening up of an intercultural and international collaborations. We have now connected with Curtin University and Cambridge, and we hope to open up with several other universities. We are connected with South America now, and we're reformulating the pedagogy. I think the earlier speakers spoke very well about it. I'm not going to repeat it. Transcend geographical boundaries, but importantly now, redefine what do we mean by this new learning community, and maybe evolve from that a network of studios around the world and a complex system of online offline. We're still looking at the protocols of that, how it is measured, how do outcomes get measured. It cannot be too random, and when new explorations of teams we're looking at, and whether several universities can begin to collaborate on a single issue studio. The other shift is that from just the outcome, now we're able to measure processes and go back to a certain process, because this gets recorded real time all the time. So this is the shift, that we are recording the process, and recording the process means you don't have to have, like earlier design studios, one final jury where a juror comes for 20 minutes or 1 hour and makes a comment and goes away, and that's the only feedback that a student gets. Now it can be more continuous and more harmonious also. The online protocols, one is discussion with community, which we believe is very important now in the pandemic to build resilience. They need to know their surroundings, map their surroundings, and so that builds in the resilience. They begin to understand and communicate. And interactive programs have been created of various kinds, so that students' health and inspiration is kept alive. There are moments when the whole online studio can feel very low. There are moments when they're very high, and we are recording these moments as well to ensure that our program meanders with it. So if there is a point where students are feeling very low, we really pause at that time, look at the issues, and are able to deal with many other ways of sensorial reinforcement that again inspires the studio. Then we have book readings, links to film, and assignments. Another new initiative we've done is create products. So we're teaching students to create products so that they get a value of their own economic value. This is like a simulation, but I think it doesn't become a one-on-one. As a student centric now, they want to make something, they want to understand the role of economy. So it could be various kinds of things, products, smaller products, lamps, lights, So this is the learning regional collaborations, because the northeast of India is very different from South India. The South India is very different from Rajasthan, where architect Shekhawat comes from. And so I think these itself are giving us a new opportunity to look at these cultural aspects of design, which were lost with the push of the modern movement. How do we understand this new digital landscape? One, we decided that let the internet or the cloud become the new connecting library. So we've begun connecting libraries across the world, and which are accessed by our students and faculty. We will be open to collaborating with the universities in Southeast Asia if ARCASIA can create a platform, so that this web of vast knowledge, one, our own studio has vast knowledge, archives about India, and many of it is not yet uploaded on a shareable basis. So we've started that whole process of scanning and bringing it into a common shared platform. The other is that we got an opportunity at periodic intervals to make our studio project open to public. So we would invite government officials, we could invite, and it became much easier, more because it was more affordable now than earlier times. What did it do from the context of the student is that we encourage the student now to begin to become more conscious of their own environment. So the manner in which a student would make a place in the home, the manner in which a student would combine or go out, all these started becoming the new, what I would call the home laboratory design studio. We called it the home laboratory design studio, so that, and this, we encourage students from different paths to start communicating with one another. And we found strangely a new thing happened, which we had not really planned in the beginning, but then got planned now, is that the entire family has got involved in the studio, and we've accepted it. So the grandmother is talking stories of their culture, we are documenting it, and which otherwise would have been lost. So we've opened up a completely new area of culture, which otherwise gets lost in the university because it's so focused and isolated. Now we are able to bring in all the cultures, and these become new programs and studio programs, so that the students get time to videograph, document the elders, get stories of maybe pre-World War time, and these are really new revelations on embracing the digital. You will see in the earlier one, there is always a combination of the handmade, and so we have a lot of online programs actually teaching, faculty teaching students how to make models, physical models. This is a book which I would refer, New Directions in Sustainable Design. It doesn't really refer to the digital, but it looks at various processes of design. And one of the practices is our own practice in India, which has been documented of the 12 practices around the world. And I'll come to that. So if we look at it now, we will see that the university can create a database, and we have now created new courses for tactile and sensorial learning despite the digital. And this combination, we are open, these courses are, we are trying to keep open source. Whoever is interested may write to us, and we can log them onto our courses for actual sensorial uh, perception and growing that perception along with the digital. So if we look at these 7 aspects, we have the design studio. We'll see that now the design studio has shifted from a combination of the manual and the digital. We are moving slowly into the hybrid studio mode, and right now it's largely synchronous, but students can post. There's a group created, and various formats, WhatsApp, Kaizala, various other formats, where the groups, and including email, and so we've given them various kind of drives that they can upload on at any time. So what happens is sometimes the student is working at 11 in the night and feels like doing a drawing. They post it. If a faculty is awake, he can respond back but it's not necessary a faculty has to respond back. But then this online and offline remains now this virtual studio where they can communicate at any time. We shifted the sites close to the student. So we changed all the programs so the students could travel to their site. They would video document it and send it back. But we also did another thing is that we started mapping architects who are staying around the students' homes in the different parts of India. And now they have become our co-collaborators to guide the student if there is a site visit. So that's how we've dealt with the digital distance by inviting new collaborators in these different regions. Model making is done both ways. You will see it's done both as digital and sensorial. 3D printing, we're teaching online 3D printing, but the printers as of now remain in a central location. It's not easy for each home to buy a printer. And so we're really looking at how can we diversify the 3D printer hubs. And theory is pretty much online, but we've been able to invite scholars from around the world, and we've just begun 3D modeling and examining the new potential of what we call the home lab. You'll see some of the GIFs that the students create of the models they're making in their homes. And I would say we are quite happy with the quality. And a lot of times the students have to have used packaging board, and because it was a lockdown, so a lot of it is actually made from uh, packages of refrigerator or food packages, and but it's still come, I think it has come to a certain degree of clarity. I go back to the sensorial mode. This was an ARCASIA workshop we held in December in our school, and there were all the countries from Malaysia, Sri Lanka had come down, uh, looking at the hands-on processes, oral communication face to face, and faculty also at times sketching. So we go back to these memories, not because we want to say that this is the only way of doing it, but I think these memories begin to awaken the sensorial. And many of these practices today, we are able to connect the students still to craftsmen, so that in their own way, the students are attempting certain sensorial processes to get a touch of material. So if we look at this, uh, the framework of the new virtual studio, we have a knowledge resource which becomes like the brain. It collects all the resources, the library, the knowledge. The workings of the studio also get uploaded in a single drive. Then we have opening up of an intercultural and international collaborations. We have now connected with Curtin University and Cambridge, and we hope to open up with several other universities. We are connected with South America now, and we're reformulating the pedagogy. I think the earlier speakers spoke very well about it. I'm not going to repeat it. Transcend geographical boundaries, but importantly now, redefine what do we mean by this new learning community, and maybe evolve from that a network of studios around the world and a complex system of online offline. We're still looking at the protocols of that, how it is measured, how do outcomes get measured. It cannot be too random. And when new explorations of teams we are looking at, and whether several universities can begin to collaborate on a single issue studio. The other shift is that from just the outcome, now we're able to measure processes and go back to a certain process, because this gets recorded real time all the time. So this is the shift, that we are recording the process. And recording the process means you don't have to have, like earlier design studios, one final jury where a juror comes for 20 minutes or 1 hour and makes a comment and goes away, and that's the only feedback that a student gets. Now it can be more continuous and more harmonious also. The online protocols, one is discussion with community, which we believe is very important now in the pandemic to build resilience. They need to know their surroundings, map their surroundings, and so that builds in the resilience. They begin to understand and communicate. And interactive programs have been created of various kinds, so that students' health and inspiration is kept alive. There are moments when the whole online studio can feel very low. There are moments when they're very high, and we are recording these moments as well to ensure that our program meanders with it. So if there is a point where students are feeling very low, we really pause at that time, look at the issues, and are able to deal with many other ways of sensorial reinforcement that again inspires the studio. Then we have book readings, links to film, and assignments. Another new initiative we've done is create products. So we're teaching students to create products so that they get a value of their own economic value. This is like a simulation, but I think it doesn't become a one-on-one. As a student-centric now, they want to make something. They want to understand the role of economy. So it could be various kinds of things, products, smaller products, lamps, lights. So this is the learning from doing. It's moved to the student-centric. How do we measure the outcomes? Group discussions are mapped. Process and continuous refinement is mapped every day by the hour. There is now a new network of flow, and the studio session is largely conducted in the virtual, and the outcomes are uploaded every evening by all faculty, and each faculty can actually converse with other faculty on the outcome of the day. I come to my own practice in remote areas. It's been very important to convey student practice with the profession, and those who are interested can look at this community development practice, which now the students engage in, and that's to build the live engagement with the outside world so that this doesn't become an isolated ivory tower of digital conversation which distances students from the real world and real practices. So of course, there are a lot of challenges with social distancing, but in smaller groups, we are managing to keep a connection with building practices, construction on site, and various other processes which are recorded in this website here. So I'll come to my last slide, the challenges. So the absence of the physical meets with the new transformation in the virtual, but which also has a sensorial tactile dimension. It's not gone all into the digital, but the digital transformation has actually opened up completely new areas for us, which we are still addressing, many new possibilities. We do feel a need for a stronger technological support, which we are still developing in our school. Also because of connectivity issues that the faculty may have or the students may have. The absence of site visit, we've shifted all sites to the local neighborhood and requested architects close to the student's home to kind of provisionally mentor till the lockdown is over. So they're talking with those architects, those group meetings we have, and so we don't miss from that site visit and the real time, real life site. And of course, there are various modes. I think the earlier speakers, in fact, had many insights which we have learned from on video conferencing, the internet publishing, 3D modeling, and the new softwares. So I would say we're really at the new threshold of moving into a parallel world that combines the real world and the digital. And the kind of studios we held, we shifted the locus to the home. And by shifting the locus to the home, by projects like where they had to observe construction practices by observing nature around them. So they will have to look at a tree, they may have to look at natural forces, they may have to, when it rains, they have to start recording the rain and the topography in their site. So we have kind of shifted all these sensorial around their home so that when they're actually working on it, they're also reinforcing other family pressures which are growing, because otherwise it becomes managing the family, everyone at home, and the work. So we are trying to innovate new studio projects which can also include the family in a very peripheral way. I won't say it's in a central way, but it begins a conversation with family and community as well, while looking at the sensorial and the digital. I have left aside a lot of the other details because the earlier speakers had already addressed them. I thought and addressed them very well, in fact. So I thought repeating them was not necessary. So I've left that aside. If someone has questions at the end on some very particular issues on or the challenges of the studio, we could address it in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Safar.
Thank you. Thank you.
For sharing your insight about how to find the balance between the digital learning and the real world issues. The last presenter for today is from professional practice from IAI, Pak Suwardana, Architect Suwardana.
Company regulations, of course, because some architects work with somebody, company. For the field projects, the intern can choose every project as long as supervised by architect and follow the regulations in that project. The Department of Public Works already announced how the sites or how the procedure to works in the sites project. The regulation of safety and healthy in working area is obligatory, including the COVID-19 prevention procedures. In some cases, a new trend as part of disruptions, this epidemic pushed some companies, including architecture company, for applying digital system. These conditions is an advantage for interns to do the internships because they can work from everywhere and supervised by any architects around Indonesia or moreover architects around the world, as long as they fulfill the requirement that is the architect must register and recognize in their architect association or architect board. The intern performance can be evaluated digitally as long as there are documentations and follow the logbook that can be downloaded via web or asked for the Secretary of IAI province. This is the table. This is how the internship work. As concluding, the new normal is a fact that we have to accept and follow. The architecture business will stagnate and some of them will review for the future advancement. It can be redesigned, continuous, or stopped totally. The internship program as part of architecture professional education that must do after graduate from 5-year architectural education is an obligatory for everybody who wants to be and work as an architect. It is important to remember that the internship program will provide a professional experience that cannot be done in the university, even with the Campus Merdeka program as an elective program for the third-year students. Hope this condition is temporary, and as social being, we just comprehended that meet people face-to-face physically is one of the privilege and the most precious ones. Thank you and God bless. That's all, Bu Mita.
Okay, thank
The
you.
speech. Sorry.
Please end your share screen, Pak Dana.
Okay.
Okay. Those are all the 3 presenters. Yeah. Let me see if there's some questions from the audience. Yeah. Okay. There is a comment from some of the audience regarding the first year again. Yeah, I think this is an issue that we will face because with the coming of the new semester, then we will receive the first year student and we need to know what to do with the situation. Maybe Pak Aswin can and Prof. Balsafar, can you share your idea about what we should do with the first year student? Pak Aswin first, maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Mita. Yeah, we will face the more challenging situation because the first or in our case is the second year student that entering architecture studio the first time, and we will have about 84 students after they already finished their first common year. And we plan to have some adjustment related with how we will design the term of reference studio. In the previous year, our second year studio is envisioned to broaden the sense of the first year architecture student, to introduce the architectural elements and so on, and to increase their senses through sketch and also modeling. But now we have to adjusting the medium. I mean, because of the limitation, travel limitation, site survey limitation, and also limitation of the group discussion. That's the very challenging situation, because our findings, one of the most important findings is from our preliminary assessment is the student feel more engaged in the group discussion with the mentor, because they can look for themselves from other peers, increasing their semangat ya, apa namanya, spirit, because if they work alone, it discouraging their spirit. That's why we still looking the appropriate, the affordable platform for the student doing the group works, either through peer, I mean pin-up, virtual pin-up, or also using Zoom for group discussion. That kind of media that we are preparing to provide for the both group of students with one or two mentors, and also with the whole class, because the first years, the second year studio, we will have a panel class, usually for the introduction, or also instructional course led by the studio coordinator. And then after the panel session, the studio divided into several studio groups led by the mentors, and we have to provide the most common or the most friendly, user-friendly platform. In this case, we use Zoom, because almost all students and all lecturers already familiar with that platform. Another thing that we don't have yet the solution is how to manage the learning outcome without face-to-face, or without the offline interaction normally occur in the studio. Prof. Mita, that's my opinion about the future, or at least next semester studio for the first year of architectural student.
Next for Professor Baltafar, maybe please respond to the question about do you have any idea what to do with the new students, and also another question about the ideal ratio between student and tutor. What do you think in this situation?
The ideal
ratio, student tutor ratio.
Okay.
And also the new student.
Sure. So what we've done, this is now again a very preliminary study, but we've preliminary process for the last 2 months, but we've had very good outcomes. It was not so difficult, because with the first year, we were already there for about 8 months before the lockdown. So this first year had already got into a certain process. It will definitely become more challenging, we know, in July, when a completely new group comes and has not met with one another, and then are in different parts of the country. So that will be definitely more challenging. I can share it's a much longer document. I would like to share it with APTARI and with the ARCASIA education, what we've done. We've shared it with our own Indian Council of Architecture on what we have done, because it gives a kind of broad framework of what were the issues. Now, if I have to just explain in a few words, we've created two new courses which are only dealing with sensorial appreciation. So it deals with sense of touch, it deals with sense of sound, it deals with, and these are very specifically created, spontaneous exercises with the students enjoy, almost like a gaming. And we've been connecting, discussing this interdisciplinary beyond architects. Now we're talking with physiotherapists, we're talking with anthropologists, neuroscience, and psychologists, because they are giving us some amazing input on how these sensorial, tactile experiences can be grown. And we've tried it now with the students, and I think we've given them those exercises. They're just loving it. In fact, they do so much work and send. I'd like to share it. I will just share it maybe in a day or two to APTARI and ARCASIA. You can really look at it, because this needs to be shared across. We are just taking time to document and put it together. In a few days, it will be there, and we want to do it open source. Everyone needs to see it, because we are in a very uncertain, strange time. And I think as much as we can collaborate and help, we should really collaborate and help. This is a world issue. That's one. On student teacher ratio, we have right now kept a 1:10 ratio. But what I have introduced in this process is that every senior faculty, so I'm a senior faculty, now has a teaching assistant along with him all the time. So what happens is that the teaching assistant actually starts getting into the documentation work, because there's so much of documentation to be done and compiled. And the senior faculty really pushes the interface, the communication, the conversation, the programming at a 1:10 ratio. It also helps in building a younger faculty now who has just passed out. It is like a faculty development program for the younger faculty. So we have combined now a faculty development program for younger faculty, 1:10 ratio. So technically it's 1:5, since 2 faculty for 10 students. But the younger faculty now is not necessarily teaching, but is coming in as a research assistant and is able to document, and also able to share basic software skills, Revit, SketchUp, BIM with the class. So I think this is a combination, and periodically, once in a week or once in 2 weeks, we're inviting very short sessions with practicing architects, so that, and these are like evening sessions or half an hour, 1 hour sessions, so that the students start rethinking. The projects given are, they have to start looking at what will be the design for the new normal. So public spaces in the new normal, the home for the new normal. I would even share those programs that we have evolved for the new normal. So it cannot be the normal auditorium or what we were doing conventionally, the school. We've stopped all that. We're really looking at what will be this transformation of how do we occupy urban space now. It's going to change. How do we occupy public transport? How do we, what is our new forms of recreation? And these are the questions that we are evolving, using film, using various other media. If you can, I think in 4 or 5 days, I will be able to share this all with you over the weekend. We're going to put it together, our semester's work, and I would share it. If something is of use, we would be happy, and one can open a dialogue. But I think the sensorial dimension along with the digital was very important for us. So they had to observe nature, they had to bring a leaf from outside the home, draw it, with all these exercises. I'll share it. It's much more detailed. But this was broadly how we dealt with it. And I am a little hopeful that it should be possible. I'm hopeful. With the new batch, the challenge is much more. I agree, but I am a little hopeful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Balsafar, for your response and also for your optimism that it is possible to try to do all of that thing. The last question for this session and also for today is just a short question for Pak Dana. Where can we find the source for students to find information about internship in consultant office? Pak Dana, can you please briefly respond to this question?
The internship can begin after they finish or graduate from the architectural education, 5 years architectural education. So it can be done after that, and then they can call to the IAI province and then ask for the logbook and doing the internships. That's all.
So the student should contact the local
Yes.
province IAI office. Okay, thank you, Pak Dana.
Depend on where they want to work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, we have already extended time from the schedule, but I think this is a very important session for everyone. We learn a lot from all the speakers, and we really hope that this presentation today and the discussion will give some insight, useful insight for everybody to bring to your own institution and start thinking about what kind of transformation that you would like to prepare. I would like to share just a brief conclusion about our discussion today, just as a short notes for everyone. Can you share my screen? Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. So this is just a summary from my notes from all the presenters. We are talking here about the finding new direction for architectural education in the new normal period. I would like to summarize that actually there are 4 main aspects of transformation. This is based on my notes, so probably there might be some additional aspects. The first is about learning platform or learning media. I think we have already discussed lots of this in the last 3 months, and but then actually the problem with the virtual learning and the distance learning is not only about the platform or the media, because that's actually very technical. I think we need to move forward and start thinking about the other 3 aspects that have been discussed by all the presenters today, about how can we update the curriculum contents, like talking about issue-based, finding about utilizing digital data, or shifting the topic, like the idea of urban space after the pandemic, the role of home, and so on, that have been discussed by the presenter. And then what is also important is about the pedagogy or the student's experience. This should also be our consideration. And then the last but not least is the healthy and safety protocols. This is also very technical, but I think this is a requirement that we all need to act upon. And what is also important is that we need to think of those aspects while ensuring the learning outcome that's stated in our education. And then this is just short notes, just to invite all the audience to think that the challenges that is posed by the new normal, maybe it should not be seen as a restriction or something that is difficult. I actually shared the optimism by Professor Balsafar just now. So we need to see that the challenges in this current situation should be considered as a trigger for innovation, as a trigger for change. And it is also become the medium for us to find the balance between virtual and the real world. And last but not least, as a new window for further sharing and collaboration, either between disciplines or between institutions or even internationally. So with this, I would like to bring the spirit to everybody, for all the audience. Let's be prepared for the new normal. We have lots of homework that we need to think, we need to do. And I hope that this information session is useful for everyone. I would like to give back to the host. Please, Ibu Nanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Paramita. On behalf of APTARI, I would like to extend our highest appreciation to all the presenters and Professor Paramita as the chair of the sessions, the panel discussions. Thank you to Senior Lecturer Dr. Zairul, Associate Professor Dr. Rufina Tilakaratne, Assistant Professor Dr. Coach Wei Chiu, and Associate Professor Dr. Aswin Indraprasta, Professor Durganan Belsavar, Architect Suwardana Winata, and also I would like to thank all the committee chair from Indonesian Institute of Architects, Architect Ketut Rana Wiyarka, Mr. Ariko Andikabina, Architect Ahmad Saifuddin Mutaki. And also, last but not least, our appreciation for the amazing collaboration to the chair and the deputy chair of Committee of Architecture Education, ACAE, Architect Gyanendra Singh Shekhawat, and Architect Adrianta Aziz. Before we end the session, I would like to thank all the participants from all over Indonesia for participating in this symposium. And I would like to kindly remind you that next week we are going to conduct another web conference. It will be in Bahasa Indonesia about the response of higher education, architecture higher education in Indonesia to the new Campus Merdeka curriculum, to be held on Saturday, 27th of June from 9 o'clock Jakarta time. Thank you once again for coming to this symposium, and see you again in another event. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you to all. Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all.